We're almost done with the chapter. Just a very small video on fixed exchange rate and policy. So effectively, there are many types, but two major types of exchange rates that a country may maintain. One is a flexible exchange rate, and then we have a fixed exchange rate. So a flexible exchange rate is what you guys will be familiar with. It's where the value of a currency can go up, can go down. So for example, if we're taking a look at Bangladesh and US, so what we know is that one USD right now, as I'm making this video, it's around, I think, 86 taka. But we know that this isn't fixed. This may go up tomorrow to 88. This may go down to 85. It can fluctuate. So that's called a flexible exchange rate. And most exchange rates in the world are flexible, but then there are also fixed exchange rates where a country or pegs its currency with another. The question is, what does that mean? What does peg mean? So suppose Bangladesh government decided to go for a fixed exchange rate, and they tell us that from now on, this is the fixed rate that we will stick to, or rather they will fix the value for taka. So what they will say is that from now on, 1 taka is going to be equal to 1 by $85. Okay, and this will not fluctuate. We are pegging the value of Bangladeshi taka to the US dollar. Okay, I mean, there is literally zero chances of this happening. For the sake of the argument, some countries do this. So for the sake of the argument, let's suppose that this is done. Okay, so what a country has done is that it has pegged its currency to this exchange rate, E, whatever it may be. In our example, this was the peg. So we have, in this case, we've pegged it at E bar. So let's go back to the interest parity condition. Of course, we have this divided by ET plus 1E. Now, of course, the next thing is, do people expect this peg to hold? Oftentimes, government may come and say that we are going to peg our currency to some other currency, or we are going to hold it fixed at a fixed level, and they often fail. So of course, expectation is a big part of it, but suppose that it is expected that this peg will hold, that the government will be successful in maintaining this peg. As a result, what we have now is that exchange rate in this period is exchange rate in the next period, is exchange rate in the next period, and so on, so on. This is all equal to the peg, right? This is what the government effectively is telling us, is that the exchange rate will no longer fluctuate. It's fixed at one level. If that's the case, what happens to this equation? We have 1 plus IT equals to 1 plus IT star times ET is the pegged amount. ET plus 1E is also the pegged amount. This and this cancels out. And so what we have is IT star. And I mean, since this peg is going to hold, time subscript is no longer needed. So we can just write interest, domestic interest is going to be equal to the foreign interest rate, of course. So what does that mean? This is a very interesting implication. Under a fixed exchange rate regime, the central bank cannot use monetary policy as a policy instrument. What does that mean? That means that if a country wants to maintain its peg, they will have to make sure that their domestic interest rate is equal to the foreign interest rate. If the foreign central bank increases its interest rate, the domestic interest rate will have to be increased. And if it goes down, domestic interest rate will have to be lower. The domestic central bank loses control of its own interest rate, right? As a result, this country can no longer use monetary policy as a policy instrument because it's not in control of its interest rate. What would happen if they don't adjust? Suppose interest rate in the, let me write down the equation. I equals to this. This is equals to, what was it? Okay. What would happen if the this adjustment is not done? Suppose interest rate in the foreign country goes up. However, the domestic interest rate is not increased. As a result, what immediately happens is that this is now higher than this. And if we want to maintain this equality, then what will have to happen? This will have to fall, right? Because this is less than this, to maintain left-hand side is equal to right-hand side, this value will have to fall. And it falling means what? That ET will be less than ET plus 1. So what you're seeing is that if the domestic country, the central bank, does not adjust its interest rate with the foreign country, it will experience a change in its exchange rate. Therefore, and that's where the problem lies, that if you want to maintain a fixed exchange rate, you will have to give up complete control of your monetary policy and just do with your interest rate whatever the foreign country is doing. And that, of course, you see why it's not a very popular policy to follow, is that most countries will not be willing to. Bangladesh will never say that, all right, so we're going to peg Taka to rupee, and as a result, our interest rate will do whatever Indian interest rate is doing. If their interest rate goes up, we will increase ours as well. That's very unlikely that it will happen. So another thing we may discuss, of course, the first finding is that monetary policy cannot be used under fixed exchange rate regime. What about fiscal policy? Can we implement fiscal policy? The answer is yes. I'm going to scroll up here. So here's the thing. Fiscal policy is what? Let's say government expenditure is going up. That's an expansionary fiscal policy. We can do that. And when we do that, IS is going to shift to IS prime. That's great. As a result, we go from Y to Y prime. That's doable as well. Up to here, no problem. The problem arises, remember in the second case, what we saw is that if the central bank is worried that this rise in Y might lead to inflation, they will want to increase the interest rate. But under a fixed exchange rate case, the central bank can no longer do that because their interest rate is pegged to the interest rate of another country. So the effect of fiscal policy still holds under a fixed exchange regime. Okay, so that is not affected. Fiscal policy is still effective under a fixed exchange rate regime. This is not hampered. What we can no longer do is, of course, that sometimes the central bank may be worried about the overall effect of the fiscal policy and may try to correct that by using monetary policy. That is no longer possible. Or what we may say is that policy mix is not possible. We cannot use monetary policy. Neither can we use a combination of both monetary and fiscal policy. We can only use fiscal policy in isolation. Okay, so that's the end of the chapter. We are going to be talking a lot more about exchange rates in the next chapter. And we are also going to be relaxing some of the assumptions that we have made in this chapter. Okay, so wait, so how much do we have left? Right, so after next chapter, which is chapter 20, we will be having our second quiz. So hopefully you guys have already started studying and preparing for the second quiz. I'll see you guys in the next video where I'm solving some problems.